Welcome to the Maintenance Mavericks podcast, a podcast for people who want to learn all things about maintenance and reliability. I'm your host, Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. Each episode, I'll be meeting with an expert within our maintenance community to take a deep dive into topics that help elevate our entire industry. Today, I'm super excited to have Mark Benak here on the show. Mark was the former CEO of Asset Performance Technologies, which was actually acquired by Uptake in 2018. He spent 3 years at Uptake supporting the integration and is now taking some well-deserved time off before he enters an ALI fellowship at Harvard in 2022. Welcome to the podcast, Mark. I'm super excited to learn from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind intro, and I'm actually here to learn from you. So,
oh shoot! Okay, all right, let's do it. Before we jump in, Mark, tell me about this fellowship at Harvard. What's that? What's going on?
Really, what it is, it's designed for your third phase of life and your third phase of education, learning how to solve society's biggest problems with multiple stakeholders. So, complex societal problems. Think climate change, poverty, healthcare, and things like that. So I'm looking forward to getting some new inspirations and going in new directions.
Oh, that's awesome. No big deal. Just changing the world. After a successful exit of the business, you're like, that's too small. Let's go tackle some even bigger problems.
Exactly.
Mark, obviously, I know a little bit about your background and how successful you've been in your previous companies. Could you share with all of our listeners a little bit more about your background and how you were first introduced into this field of maintenance and reliability?
So I spent most of my career in small startup tech companies. So I'm a recovering mechanical engineer. But early in my career, I was exposed to some heavy industries. And I was always fascinated with the big machinery and the high volume production. And it wasn't until about 2004, I was just decided to give up on a venture capital fund here in New Mexico we were putting together and was looking for things to do. I was introduced to this new small little company called Asset Performance Technologies. And that was really my introduction into maintenance reliability. We had a content database, an asset strategy library, if you will, about how equipment fails and what to do about it. And some optimization algorithms, think software that ran on top of those recommendations from the library to financially optimize the maintenance strategy for the customer. And so that's really how I got started, just calling on customers and learning about maintenance and reliability.
That's awesome. What an awesome journey. You kind of got thrown into the deep end, it sounds like.
Very much so. Jumped off the high dive right into the deep end. Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. And obviously you recently had a super successful exit to Uptake over the last 3 years. And, a huge congratulations to you and the entire team for that successful exit.
Thank you very much. It's not as easy as it sounds.
It never sounded easy, Mark. You've been in the industry for over a decade now, and I'm sure you've gone through some highs, some lows, and you've gotten to know the industry, at a very, very intimate level. The way that I want to kick this podcast off is kind of just the fundamentals, to be honest. What's the difference between maintenance and reliability? And I'm sure you got asked this question a ton when you were running that company. Why do people often mistake maintenance and reliability? What are the differences and what are the goals?
Yeah, I guess this is one of my pet peeves, right? And I think your listeners are probably pretty clear what the differences are. For me, I like to keep things very simple. That helps me remember them. Maintenance is the process of doing work to either prevent failures or correct failures. And reliability is the outcome from that work, right? Reliability is a state of health, if you will, of industrial equipment. And I find that the practitioners understand this very well in most cases, the difference between maintenance and reliability. But when you look at how corporations are organized, oftentimes those functions, there may be only one of them in the organization. Like there's a maintenance department, but not a reliability department, or there's a reliability department without a maintenance department. To me, both are important. Both need to be combined. One is the means to the end of the other.
I completely agree. And it's kind of the train that we are on too. To us, maintenance is all about like the actions that you take on your equipment. Mm-hmm. But reliability is more about the strategy. And you can't have one without the other. True. Right? Otherwise, you just do work to do work. If you only have reliability but no maintenance, then you have a great strategy, but you're not doing anything with it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think corporate CEOs in asset-intensive industries, I think understand at a fundamental level, okay, yeah, we have to do something to maintain the equipment, to keep it reliable, to keep it producing widgets or whatever it is that our company makes. But they often don't understand, maintenance spending was always that kind of black box that money gets thrown at. Nobody really understands why that much money is going toward it. And I think the more we can do as vendors and providers and experts in this community to help company leadership understand why these dollars are being spent and the direct impact maintenance has on reliability and consequently on profitability of the organization, I think the better off the world will be.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And it's something that we're trying to push as well here at Upkeep. I've got this next question for you. And it's kind of this intersection, you already mentioned it, between safety, reliability, and profitability. What does that mean to you? And how have you helped construct what this means to other business owners?
What I try to do at APT and Uptake is whenever I was talking with corporate leadership of a potential customer is try to make sure that those principles are understood, that a safe organization that is also a reliable organization is going to be a profitable organization. So then it comes down to, all right, so how do you optimize, safety and reliability? We didn't focus as much on safety at APT. I mean, at some level, our maintenance strategies did consider, worker safety and ways of, keeping equipment reliable is going to keep people safe, right? There's various other vendors out there that do that sort of thing, that focus on safety and compliance and ensuring that, people are doing the right things, that the workplace is a safe place and there's no accidents and injuries. Where we spent most of our time was on the reliability piece. What is the right maintenance strategy to achieve the desired reliability at a cost you can afford? And that was the message to our customers and the types of services we would deliver.
How do you do that? That's like the problem to solve, right? To maximize safety, profitability, reliability of your equipment in the most cost-effective way possible.
I think you hit it at, in your comments, you've hit it at some of the important items, and that's cost. And understanding, how are you spending money in your organization when it comes to maintenance and reliability? How are you spending on, just at a very high level, on preventive maintenance? And for me, again, I like to keep it simple. There's two types of maintenance. It's either preventive or it's corrective. Yes, we can talk about predictive, prescriptive, whatever, industrial IoT and all that kind of stuff. But those are all preventive techniques because you're either trying to prevent the failure or trying to fix it after it breaks. So how are you spending money in the organization, breaking down preventive spending versus corrective spending? If you're spending too much money on preventive, maybe your strategies aren't, maybe you're over maintaining the equipment and you're overspending money because you don't really need that high of reliability for your application. Vice versa, if you're overspending on corrective maintenance, what are you not doing to prevent failures, to avoid that super expensive lost downtime and unplanned downtime when it happens? And finding a balance between those two is really the optimal solution. And that all starts with understanding your data, right? Your cost data from your maintenance management system, like the system you have at Upkeep.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a super broad question here, Mark. Generally, do you feel like companies are over maintaining their equipment, under maintaining, or they have no freaking clue?
That's a sweeping generalization, right? And I would say it really depends on the industry vertical we're talking about.
Yeah.
Some of them are doing it better than others. Let me try to give you some examples. Like we were just chatting before the start of the podcast, that there are companies out there that are still using pencil and paper, Excel to manage their maintenance. All right. So they're very much on that other end of the spectrum. Compared to something like the U.S. Power industry, electricity power generation industry, a lot of the IP from my previous company, APT, Asset Performance Technologies, came out of the Electric Power Research Institute and from that industry. And if you think about it, look, I walk into my office, I turn the lights on, I expect the lights to go on.
Yeah.
And very rarely they don't. And if they do, that's a complete thing to get super bugged about, right? We just take it for granted that electricity will be there. Well, why is that? Well, they've thought a lot about maintenance reliability and how to ensure that electricity is always on. Industries like oil and gas, petrochemicals, other processing industries where the cost of downtime is significantly expensive, those companies have put a lot of thought into how to do this. Other industries, water and wastewater is getting better. But in my experience in talking with those types of companies, I hope I don't offend any of your listeners, they don't think about downtime in terms of money. They just think about, well, if I dump sewer into the streets, that's really bad, and there's going to be fines, and we'll have EPA problems. But in my conversations with them, it's really hard to get them to think about there's a financial cost to maintenance. There's also financial benefit to maintenance. And how do you balance that for an optimal strategy? So this is a long way of answering your question, Ryan, but it really spans the gamut. You'll find companies that are good at it, and you'll find companies that are bad at it.
I think you're absolutely right, Mark. And to your point, I was just talking to a friend of mine in the oil and gas industry. We're kind of talking about like the cost of downtime. And I was like, okay, well, how do you measure the cost of downtime? And he responded with, we actually don't look at it. We don't look at the cost of, no, but hear me out. And I was like, that seems crazy. He was like, if there's a downtime event at our plant, that means something catastrophic happened. We have a 99.99999% uptime at our plant. And it's not so much about measuring the cost of downtime. It's about just keeping production running the most efficient that it can be. And I thought that was so interesting because, in so many different industries, they're measuring like hours of downtime every single month. Whereas the oil and gas plant, like if you have a single downtime event that's not planned, something absolutely catastrophic happened.
Which does happen in that industry, right? There's
fair.
I won't pick on a certain company with two initials from England that has had several accidents in that regard. But the point is this: is that there's a significant cost to that catastrophic event, and yeah, those are infrequent, but they do happen, and they are very costly, and that should factor into your thinking as you're looking to develop an optimally balanced, maintenance strategy to get the reliability you need at the cost you can afford.
The reliability you need at the cost you can afford. How do you measure that though? I mean, oftentimes what we hear from our customers, people in the industry, is that maintenance reliability is undersupported, underfunded. Ultimately, we want to see a reliability plan that has the funding to support full reliability program, but ultimately we have a finite budget. What do we do?
There's always a finite budget. Those budgets are getting smaller and smaller, right? As the companies want to operate their facilities at peak performance with less people, right? So that's always an issue. There's various different ways to do this. We had a proprietary way at APT, some proprietary algorithms that are now part of Uptake's offering. But it really starts, and this is also something that Uptake offers, but it starts with really analyzing your work order data and understanding where you are spending. Like I said earlier, is it preventive versus corrective? Is it a particular system, subsystem, even a particular component type throughout the organization? A particular style of pump seems to fail too often. Well, why is that? Are we not maintaining it right? And it's getting at the heart of those issues and really taking a deeper dive into the data that many companies aren't staffed to do, right? That don't have those large reliability departments with lots of people to go and do this. That's where, companies like Upkeep, can provide better analytics to help companies get a better sense for this is what it costs when we correct it. This is what we cost when we do, preventive maintenance and trying to find a balance between those two quantities on an annualized basis.
The proof is in the data, and work order data, your CMS, whether you use an Upkeep or something else. Mark, we have a segment at the end of our show where we do a quick fire set of questions where I ask a quick question and we get your immediate response within 20 seconds or less. You ready for this?
I am.
All right, Mark, first question: what's a technology you're most excited about, or one that you think will leave a lasting impact on our industry?
I'm really excited about the potential for machine learning models, and I'll be the first one to admit we're not quite there yet as a society and a set of industries. But whatever we can do to apply artificial intelligence to be able to do more with less people, I think is the future. All
right, I love it. What about your favorite memory of the biggest win you've had in the maintenance reliability space?
The easy answer would be the sale of APT to Uptake, but let me go back to the early days of APT. And we started off as a services company, and we landed a big contract with Suncor Energy up in Canada, oil sands refining business. And that was a huge contract for us and really put us on the map as a company and allowed us to develop partnerships with companies like Meridian, who was acquired by GE Digital, et cetera. So that was a pretty proud moment for me.
All right, Mark, you've had some awesome big wins across your career. So picking one is probably not too easy.
Well, that one stands out, both, but thanks for the question.
What about a big mistake that you've learned from?
There are a lot of mistakes. I think the one that stands out for me as I reflect back on the APT experience and even some of my time at Uptake was, when you're a technology vendor and you're hawking software and maybe content libraries and things like that, you focus only on that. And we did that at APT too. We started off as a services company. We pivoted away from services and started selling software and didn't really want to do services. But what I found, in order to be successful, you got to combine software with services to help the client achieve its goals with your tools and be successful. And I think we turned a blind eye to services for too long, and that was a huge mistake in our growth.
So both of those components super important to supporting the company and essentially all of your customers.
There's a great article by Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital firm, about the new business of software and AI and how service is an important component that just speaks to this topic.
All right, we'll make sure to find that one and link it in the show notes. What resources have you been finding yourself learning from as you continue to create more educational content? Where do you go for new ideas?
So, I'm doing less of that these days, as you noted at the beginning of the podcast. Mostly just LinkedIn now. But when I was more actively working in the space, I'm still doing some consulting now. But LinkedIn's a great place to start. Companies like Upkeep have a maintenance community. So does reliabilityweb.com. And going to conferences, and the big ones for me were always the Reliability Web conferences and the SMRP conferences. And I find that, back pre-COVID, right, when we could all go to conferences and you could meet a lot of people very quickly. You just walk the exhibition hall and talk to people and learn and get, and find out what they're doing and tell them what you're doing. I mean, it's a great way to kind of get to speed quickly.
That's absolutely right. And what I found in our industry is everyone's so willing to be very, very open and share ideas and best practices. And it's been really cool. And ultimately, that's the way that I've learned so much, Mark. So it's folks like yourself jumping on this podcast with me, getting a quick glimpse into your story and how you learned along the way is just so beneficial to me and all of our listeners. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Mark. And thank you for going through this quick fire set of questions with me. We're kind of at the tail end of this podcast. Can you share with our listeners all the different ways that they can connect with you and follow you on your journey, Mark?
Sure. Probably the best way is just on LinkedIn. Mark Benak, B-E-N-A-K. I think M. Benak is the handle. I don't know if that's how you can find it on LinkedIn, but that's probably the best way to keep track of me. I've been sort of spending less time on other social media channels.
I really appreciate you for joining us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to today's episode of the Maintenance Mavericks podcast. Again, my name is Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email directly at ryan@onupkeep.com. You can also find me and Mark in the maintenance community Slack group, where you can feel free to ask us any follow-up questions from today's episode or also suggest future topics. You can sign up at upkeep.org. I hope to connect with all of you soon. Until next time, thanks again, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you.